Welcome to the Bella Vista Gardening Program. I'm Geri Hoerner, and joining me again today is Barb Templin. She's on our little committee, and I love to have her on the show with us. And today we're going to be talking about rooting azaleas. So we will also talk about upcoming events, and there's not too many of those, and what you need to do in your garden in June. So the upcoming event mainly is the Bella Vista Garden Club is having what they call a virtual sale from June 11th to June 13th. Our normal sale is the first Saturday of May, but with the virus shutdown, it hasn't worked. So this is what they're doing. They're going to have time from 8 to 11 in the morning where you can email the president or someone in Garden Club and make an appointment to show up. There'll be 10 people at a time allowed at the wastewater plant to pick up plants.
Correct.
And so you'll just call for an appointment. You'll go to the wastewater, do your shopping, pay with either check, cash,
or PayPal.
And we have little envelopes to put it in. We'll all be wearing masks and gloves, so it will be safe. And so if you just go to our bellavistagardenclub.com site, it has all the information, and it lists. And there's also a list of all the plants. We have wonderful plants.
Right. And there's a morning time, and then there's an afternoon time.
Well, there's an evening time on Friday from 4 to 7 on Friday if you work during the week, or if you're able to work. So we don't work here, we just volunteer.
That's right.
But you may want to volunteer somewhere during the day. Anyway, it's going to be June 11th to the 13th. So
and prices are really inexpensive.
Well,
they're going to range from $5 to $10.
They're 5 or 10. The little ones are 5, so it's easy to calculate what you owe, 5 or 10.
Right.
So that's
got to make the math simple for us.
Yeah. So it's going to be a good sale, and we have a lot of wonderful plants. So, and today we're going to be talking about rooting azaleas, and it's fairly easy to do, to propagate if you have a favorite plant. We have a take root video to show you, and it's produced by Beth Strickland. She's a Benton County Master Gardener, and that she had very good luck in rooting the cuttings of her azalea. So let's see how she did this, and she had wonderful results. So let's look at that video.
Welcome to Take Root. Well, today I'm going to give you an update on a video that we produced last year on propagating azalea cuttings. As you can see, these are my 1-year-old babies. I took 13 softwood cuttings in the month of July last year, and all 13 cuttings rooted. That's a 100% success rate. Now, because this is an important method of propagating our favorite plants, I thought it's important to revisit those steps again today. Isn't this the most glorious white azalea you've ever seen? I bought this azalea about 15 years ago on the parking lot of my local Walmart store here in Bentonville. And it has been a showstopper ever since, and a survivor. It's made it through countless droughts over the last 15 years, and even a minus 10-degree winter last year. Now, I would love to have more of this beautiful azalea, but I don't know what variety it is because it was just listed as an assorted azalea when I bought it. So the only way to make more of these is to propagate it. And that's what we're going to do today from cuttings. Azalea cuttings can be taken any time from June onward, depending on the weather and the variety of azalea. Start by taking several cuttings from the new growth that come from the ends of the existing wood. They should be somewhere between a softwood and hardwood cutting. The most commonly used rooting medium is 50-50 peat moss and perlite. For this video, I am using sterilized potting soil and a little peat moss. The goal is to provide both moisture and oxygen for the new cuttings. Be sure and water the potting mix several times before you add the cuttings. Each cutting should be about 3 to 4 inches long, preferably taken in the morning from a well-watered plant. Cut off all but the top cluster of leaves, or carefully strip off the leaves without damaging the tender bark. If the terminal leaves are large like those on a hydrangea, then consider cutting them in half. When you are ready to plant the cuttings, wound the bottom ½ inch or so of each branch by scraping off the bark with a knife. Dip the end of the cutting into a rooting powder or liquid. Tap off the excess powder before placing them in the potting mix. I usually plant 10 to 20 cuttings in a 6-inch flower pot, so the leaves are barely touching. Straighten 2 coat hangers and bend them into U shapes. Stick the ends of the wire into the peat moss on each side of the pot so the 2 U's cross at the top. Place the pot, cuttings, and wire supports in a large plastic bag. Tie the plastic bag above the wire supports. Put the cuttings in a shaded area that gets bright light but not direct sunlight. Leave the plastic bag on the cuttings until you are sure that the cuttings have formed a good root system. No watering will be necessary during this time. After 3 or 4 weeks, untie the plastic bag and gently pull up on one of the cuttings. If it slips out easily, the cuttings have not rooted and you need to reseal the plastic bag. After the cuttings rooted, I transplanted them to 4-inch pots, and they spent the winter outside on my patio under a clear plastic tote, which I use as a mini greenhouse. This year I plan to propagate my favorite butterfly bushes, Weigelia, slender Deutzia, and my evergreen boxwood. So as you can see, propagating softwood cuttings is really easy. You just have to remember to do it during this time of the year. For the Benton County Master Gardeners, this is Beth Strickland and Take Root.
Well, Beth really knows what she's doing with these azalea cuttings, and I
Yes.
tried this azalea cutting, I don't know, a couple years ago, and I didn't score the stem like that, so I didn't get any results. But
Well,
I'm
you
going to
said
try
that
this.
Beth gets 100%.
She had 100% success rate.
And
so
that's a phenomenal amount.
it is.
Because
she's a master gardener. So.
Right.
But anyway, you can also do this, like she said in the video, hydrangeas, butterfly bush, Weigelias, Deutzia, and boxwoods. So there's a lot of different hardwood plants
right,
you can
but
use.
the thing about propagating is that if you want instant gratification,
Oh.
it is not going to happen
No,
with
'cause
azaleas.
it's going to take a while for that.
I don't know if
Sapling.
they noticed in the video that she said, this is my 1 year group.
Right.
And that really is about how long it takes in
Just to
order
get
for it. I mean, you can tell if it's rooted after you've put them in the pot. And,
Yeah,
but if you,
well, you have to root it
if you-
before you put them in that little pot.
right,
Yeah.
if you pull up on them and they come out easy, that means they haven't developed
They
any
haven't-
roots.
Right, yeah.
But if there's a little tug,
Yeah.
but like I said, it's going to take months for this to occur.
Yeah, it takes a year to get to that stage.
That's right.
But I've tried it in the past, and I need to do this because I have 2 azaleas that I bought years ago. And the one is the white gumpo, and the other is a rosebud azalea. It's pink, and it blooms like a little rosebud. They're so cute.
That is
Well, I
pretty.
can't even find them anymore because my sister-in-law wants rosebuds, and I can't find them unless I pay $55, $65 online plus shipping, so per plant. So I'm going to try to get these beautiful azaleas.
Right, right.
And I did have an azalea bush that did this on its own, only it
That's what you were
did
saying.
a layering, and you can also layer azaleas
Right.
and root them that way. And this is a little picture when you layer the azalea. I don't know if you can see that.
And you notice the pin
Yeah,
in there?
they hold that, just hold the stem down under the ground, and then hold it under the ground, and it will root eventually. Now, it could be that if you score that a little bit like she did on that stem,
Oh, sure.
maybe that would help. But I have had an azalea do this
On its own.
on its own, and it was right next to the mama plant. So what I did is I just, after it got good roots, I moved it over a few feet. Well, the problem now is the mama plant and all the other plants I had before, they bloom in May. Well, the new little one blooms in June. It's blooming right now, the first
Yeah,
week of
well,
June.
it
It
needed time
always
to grow up.
blooms later, and I don't know why. It's always done that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe something with layering. I don't know. But
And I didn't, I guess when I was looking this up, I didn't realize that there are 10,000 different types of azaleas.
oh, yeah, yeah. And there's
Just
more all the
amazing.
time. There's more
I guess
all
the
the time.
two things that you have to know about azaleas, though, is whether it's an evergreen or deciduous.
Right.
Because propagating them then is a little different for
Could be
each
the
one.
time
And it's
of
really
year.
hard to propagate deciduous ones.
Yeah, I
So-
think so. That's why they're so much more expensive, I think, too.
I guess, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
So anyway, if you want to try that process, the layering method, they say it should be done in early spring or in autumn, either one. And then you want to select a stem that's at least 2 years old off of the bush that bends, and then cover it real well with the ground. And then you can dig a trench also if you
Oh,
want
to-
to
yeah,
do
that's
a
a good
trench.
idea.
And you may have several places where it'll root. It would be actually several different plants. Now I also had an oak leaf hydrangea that did this on its own. A branch was down on the ground, I didn't notice, and had mulch on top of it, and it rooted. And I now have another oak leaf hydrangea that I'll have to move or give away or something. So, so the plants will do this on their own, but you can encourage this and get more plants. So it's a great method to do that. And the thing is, if you do have an azalea or oak leaf hydrangea or hydrangea, and you don't know the variety, so you can't go buy it, then, you know, it's best to propagate your own if
Right,
you can, if you got the
right.
time, and you don't want that instant beautiful plant. to
Well,
put in
the
your
other
garden.
thing that Beth had said also was that a key part of this propagating is to dip the stem, when you're doing cuttings, is to dip the stem in
The root tone, the root.
Right. And that, you will have no success
Oh, yeah,
if you don't do that
Yeah,
first,
yeah.
because that helps the plant stimulate that
Oh, yeah,
growth.
yeah.
And you can pick that up at any garden center.
Oh, it's any box store, any garden center. And there's
Right.
either liquid farm or there's powder farm. There's
Oh, I
either
didn't
both.
know
Yeah,
that.
the,
Okay.
the liquid farm is you just dip it in the liquid. I think I use the powdered farm because then I know it's sticking on
Sticking,
that root.
right.
I can see it
Right.
sticking. The liquid, you know, I'm not sure, it drips off and maybe it disappears, but the powder is what I use. And I have used that on some things, but I just haven't had good
okay.
luck with it, and I just haven't done all the steps that she did. And then covering it again with the container, the clear container over the winter, you know, on the deck. to
Well,
get it
initially, aren't you
like a
trying...
greenhouse?
Right. Aren't you trying to keep almost 100% humidity in that?
Right, with the plastic bag.
Right.
So that keeps it moist, and you don't have to go in and water it again. So that
Right.
just cuts down on the work to try to get these propagated. And you know, after you see how hard it is or how long it takes to propagate a plant, these are what the nurseries have to do. That's how they
right.
have to propagate.
That's
so
right.
you think, well, I'm paying $25 for this plant, but you know, it's 8 years old or something. So the nurseries have all that time and effort into the plant.
And that's
so it
what
does
the-
explain some of the higher prices.
Yes, some of the
But
cost.
I
to
don't
it.
want to spend $50 on an azalea.
Really?
So, no, I don't. I don't, but I would if I
Yeah, if you had
if
to,
I had
right?
to, yeah. You know, us gardeners, we will do a lot of things we don't want
Yes,
to do.
we will. Yes, we will.
So, anyway.
There's nothing like digging in the dirt.
And
you
I
know?
think it's probably a great idea to do the hydrangeas and the, I know we had a garden club member years ago that wanted to propagate boxwoods.
Oh,
And she had really good luck with propagating boxwoods. Her and her husband were diligent about, you know, what cuttings they took, and she did a pretty
well,
good
and
job.
that's the other thing. The cuttings that you take, aren't you looking for not exactly new growth,
Yeah.
but it still has to be like a year.
A little kind of
so.
woody growth, they call
Right.
it. You know, it's not
Right.
real flimsy and just a new
Right.
growth stem. So that's the other thing you have to look for. So,
And is any dirt?
well, she
okay.
used a mix of the peat moss and
And the
perlite.
perlite,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think she used a different mix.
Okay, okay.
But it's you just have to have that peat moss in there to keep that nice and moist while
Right.
they're setting their roots.
Right.
So, and then not to put that in the sun when you're trying
Exactly,
to get it rooted.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
had them on the bench, my potting bench, which get light but no direct sun.
And then wait.
And then wait. You have to
And
wait
wait.
and wait.
And wait.
And then don't try to pull them. You know, the longer you wait, the better it is.
That's right.
If you wait that 6 or 8 weeks, you know.
Well, in fact,
not
it's
gonna hurt.
probably better to like forget about them for
Yeah,
a while.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
You don't certainly want to be counting the days because
No,
that'll.
But if you just write on the bag, you know, when you actually put them in the pot. I
Right.
think that would help me to know how long it's been, because I couldn't remember probably when I cut them. But
Yeah.
if you just, you know, mark the bag when you put them in there so you know how many weeks they've been in there.
That's right.
And she did 5 in a pot to start with. She
Yeah.
had 5. And even if you leave them in there and they get more roots, it won't hurt anything, because you're going to move those 5
to
cuttings
individual.
to individual 4-inch pots. So you'll have enough room in that 4-inch pot for roots.
So when do you think they're ready to be planted outside?
Well, I think that first year,
Okay.
you know,
So
after
you
she
wait
saw
that
how
first
they
year and
they
then.
looked in 1-gallon pots. She had them in 1-gallon pots. So I think they'd be ready to plant. But when you do plant them, then you'd also have to allow for how large that mature plant's going to be.
Right,
Because
right.
if it's just one stem, you don't want to plant them too close together. So
Right.
you have to prepare that plant will eventually be as big as the mother plant. May
Now,
not be a couple years, but
do azaleas grow fairly quickly?
it depends on the variety, I think.
Okay, that makes
I've had
sense.
The gumbo azaleas I had, they grew fairly quickly.
Oh.
They spread. Well, the gumbo azalea is a low-growing azalea,
Oh, that's nice.
and it blooms later. So when I layered my azalea bed, I think I talked about this before, I have the rhododendrons in the back, and then I have a variegated azalea that blooms
Oh.
early, and then that blooms. And then when the rhododendrons start blooming, then the rosebud azaleas start blooming.
Oh,
And then
very
after they
pretty.
finish, then the gumpos at the base are white, and then they start blooming. So I have an extended growth, a bloom time
right.
in that bed. It starts in the back and then moves to the front.
And that comes from knowing your individual plants.
Yeah, you have to know how they
That's
grow
right.
and when they bloom, because some azaleas will bloom really early,
Right, and
and then
then,
some are later.
Right.
The gumpos are a little bit later. And I did add a new variety this year called Snow.
oh,
It's a small white azalea, but it's not the gumbo. It doesn't spread like a flat, ground cover type. So I had to.
well,
just
I
do
had
that.
read where they have ones that grow to maybe 2-3 feet, and then
Oh,
they
yeah.
have some that grow to 6 feet.
Oh yeah,
And there again, it's important to
To
know
know, and where you
what
put
kind
it.
of plant you have.
right. Because you don't want to trim azaleas unless you have to.
That's right.
You
That's
want to
right.
trim them after they bloom,
That's right.
so you don't cut off the blooms, later in the year. So
Right.
they start setting their buds probably July, late June, July. They start August. They set their buds for the following spring.
And so you don't want to do any
Oh no, you don't prune.
trimming from or pruning
You'll
from that.
cut off your blooms.
That's right.
You won't have anything next year. Then you also have those reblooming azaleas,
Yes.
and they bloom a flush in the spring, and then they will periodically bloom through the year. And then they have a little more, flush in the fall.
Right.
So, but
Right.
they don't bloom constantly all summer, but they bloom more than the normal
The normal ones.
old-fashioned azaleas.
Right.
So, anyway, but azaleas are fun.
And
a
they're
lot of
so
people have.
beautiful,
They're so
and
beautiful.
what a sign of spring
Oh, yeah.
are azaleas.
Yeah, I love them. And we did a tour in Little Rock years ago, a garden tour, and there were some azaleas there that were almost as tall as the houses.
Isn't that amazing?
And they were maybe 25, 35, 40 years old, maybe older,
Wow.
I don't know, but they were just huge, just full of blooms, just beautiful. So
I can imagine.
and then as long as you feed your azaleas after they bloom,
Okay.
and then
And
they're
that's
set
once
for
a
the
year.
They're set for the year.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So
All right.
So anyway, azaleas are a wonderful plant, and we love them. And
So you're going to give this propagating
I am going
a
to
try.
try. I'm going to try to get some of those rosebud azaleas,
Good. You'll have to let us all know
yeah.
how you do.
and then see who wants one if I can
Yeah.
find a place to put them.
Yeah.
So
Can you put me on the list?
I'll put you on the list. Hopefully I'll have some success, I hope. So anyway, but there are other things to do in June
Yes.
besides that. It's a transition month, between spring and summer. So,
Yeah.
and you got to finish your planting. There's still some annuals out there to purchase if you haven't got all your annuals in.
That's
but,
right.
It's best to get them in early June.
That's right.
Okay, so
The annuals are the one thing that has to be deadheaded
Some of
most of the yes,
some
most
of
of the
them, yeah,
time.
yeah.
But like any of your plants, this time of the year, whenever you see them bloom and a
dead bloom.
a dead bloom, then cut it off.
Yeah, take
You
it
know, trim it and make sure, and then fertilizing, depending again on your plants.
Right.
Um,
Annuals in pots take a lot more fertilizer.
right, right.
And the
Because
herbs-
you're watering more.
Yeah, you're washing
Pots
it out.
than
So if you haven't finished planting your herbs, you want to do that. And June and July is when you want to harvest your garlic, because you planted them last October, hopefully.
hopefully.
Yeah. And then
Yep.
bulbs, we have the
Well, my favorite bulb now is the lady,
the naked ladies.
the naked ladies.
Oh, that's
They come up with this beautiful, tall green leaf, and it looks so lush. And
looks
then
tropical.
they die off, and then a month or so later, you see this one little stalk coming up.
yeah.
And I tell you,
And it,
that is the most gorgeous bloom.
it smells good too.
Yes. And when you see that the leaves have turned brown, you can cut them off. You
After
can-
they've turned brown. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. You can.
Okay. Then perennials, daylilies will be blooming soon, and you want to deadhead the any faded blooms.
Right.
And
right.
pinch back your mums until July. Then on lawns,
Well,
you want to just
The
water.
thing that I see the most problem with in lawns is that people cut their grass way too short.
Yeah.
You really need to give it some height.
Yeah.
Because in our summers down here,
It's hot.
It's hot, and mostly hot with sun.
Right.
That's going to burn your lawn. And you don't want to fertilize it and then cut it
and then
real,
burn it,
because
yeah.
between the two, then you're not doing your lawn
Yeah. And
a
you just
good
need
favor.
you just need an inch of water a week for the lawns.
Right.
So
And
keep
it
that.
says to any book that I've ever read, it says that you need to, keep your lawn at maybe 2-3 inches tall, because that's a healthy
It's
height.
a healthy height. Yeah.
Yep.
So roses, watch for your aphids and fungus, and then deadhead, the blooms to encourage more. I fertilize sometimes like Mother's Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July, and then Labor Day. So
Now,
that's
does that take a special fertilizer
Well,
for
there's
roses?
rose fertilizers, and there's a fertilizer recipe on our website, bellavistagardenclub.com, under roses, or under garden information. You'll find that in there. It's a great
It's
recipe.
a resource. It's got so much
Oh
information.
yeah,
in it.
there's a lot of information on the website. And I haven't seen in June, but Japanese
Ladybug.
beetle yet.
Yes.
I haven't seen any, so I don't know if they're just late.
We're keeping
or
our
if they're not
fingers
coming.
crossed.
Yeah, keep your fingers crossed. Trees
right.
and shrubs, we got to prune the dead limbs out.
Yeah, and
That's
that's
about
really about about it. You just, a lot of times you have to trim the center of your bush or your tree, you know, because it gets so dense.
Yeah, you need some air
that
circulation.
you need to get the sun and the air in there too.
And
So
any
just keep looking.
any cross branches that are rubbing against another branch, you want to cut those out.
That's right.
And then as far as vegetables, you know, just monitor the water and then start harvesting those great tomatoes when they come up.
Oh
and-
yes, there's nothing better than homegrown tomatoes.
yeah,
Oh
so-
my goodness, my goodness.
Okay.
You bet.
So, and don't forget to enjoy your garden. Sit there and take it in. You don't want to just work out there all day. You want to enjoy it. You know,
Right.
watch the
Right.
birds come in.
That's the
and
reason you're doing all this hard
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
You know, is so that you can sit back and enjoy it. You know.
Yeah. So if you have any other questions about gardening in June, the Master Gardener website has more information along with the Garden Club website, and that's bentoncountygardening.org. So that's filled with information. And then the Bella Vista Garden Club hasn't had meetings in the summer. We don't meet in the summer, and hopefully, if all goes well, we will
Yes.
start meeting again in September, and we'll keep you posted on that. So hopefully
Right.
we'll start meeting again in September when we can have more than 10 people at a
Right.
gathering. So,
So
but-
just be safe, be healthy, everybody.
Yeah.
You know, these are some
it's tough times.
tough times.
But our
for us.
gardens are loving all this
Yes,
attention
they
they're
are.
getting. They are. So, okay, thank you, Barb, for
Well,
joining
thank
me
you for
today
having
and
me.
sharing all this great information. And we hope you've enjoyed the show. And we'll tune in again next week, or next month, not next
Yeah.
week, next month. And till then, don't forget to stop and smell the roses.